generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I thought we would cover something I think is pretty interesting for Star Wars. There's been some talks, what is the future of Star Wars, especially since there was a recent writer that left the Rey project, and we've had this talk about somebody else, Simon, I forget his last name, is now going to be covering a new trilogy in Star Wars. And so there's a lot of talking going on about the Star Wars movies and shows, and I think it's still going to be some time until we see them walk the walk as opposed to talk the talk. But there is an article by the Hollywood Reporter that I thought was worthwhile to take a look at. Here it says Star Wars movies race for Rey and the future of the franchise on the big screen. And what I think is interesting about this is there's this idea that supposedly they want Rey to be like the centerpiece moving forward. And so we're going to go ahead, let's just kind of go through this and then we'll talk about our opinion. So it says, forget the Death Star, the most coveted weapon in the Star Wars movie arsenal in or for sorry, forget the Death Star. The most coveted weapon in the Star Wars movie arsenal is the character of Rey Skywalker. Rey is the centerpiece of Disney Star Wars, so it's really no, I would say, surprise that that's what Lucasfilm wants to focus on. Since the November 7 reveal that Simon Kinberg, there we go, had signed on to develop and write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy for Lucasfilm and Disney, debate has focused on whether or not it would be a continuation of the so-called nine-film Skywalker saga, tying it to the legacy of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and storylines first laid out by George Lucas in 1977. The reason for the debate is that the new hoped-for trilogy would feature Rey in some form or fashion. So, with them going, you know, post Skywalker saga, part of me thinks it's going to tie to it in some way, shape, or form. Part of me hopes that it is something completely new and they can just kind of go away from what George Lucas created and stop trying to borrow slash bank on his ideas for their new stuff. So my hope is that by maybe when we thought about The Force Awakens coming out, we kind of thought that was very much inspired by George Lucas's ideas, but then it was propelling us into something new. And then that's not quite what we got. And so maybe, in some sort of interpretation here, that this is kind of that same idea, but with Rey. So, like, this trilogy was, you know, creating this character Rey, and then maybe moving forward, we're gonna have, some new original ideas by Disney and Lucasfilm to propel Star Wars moving forward. So let's see. Let's keep on going. It says some fans have expressed criticism that Lucasfilm will return to the to make episodes, as they are called, beyond the nine movies that comprise the Skywalker story, which had been billed as concluding with 2019 Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. That film grossed over $1 billion globally, but also wasn't received well by much of the fan base. It received a B plus from the audiences polled by Cinema Score and a 51% critics tally at Rotten Tomatoes, which for a Star Wars film, that is not very good. But Rey, the scavenger turned Jedi, played by Daisy Ridley in the last three episode movies, is key to the franchise's next turn that potentially puts Kinberg's trilogy story development as early in its conceptual stages as it may be on a collision course with the Rey standalone movie that is actively in the works with director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. Hopefully I said that right. So we have this standalone Rey film that will be coming out eventually, right? And then there's going to be a trilogy after that. So is this standalone film going to be what separates Disney's new Star Wars movies from the past? Is this movie going to be kind of what shifts away from the Skywalker saga and shifts to the Disney Star Wars saga, essentially? That's kind of what I'm wondering. I mean, Star Wars is way too big of an IP for them to not make movies anymore. And yes, the original six are, like the Star Wars films, and it's really hard to recapture that not being George Lucas. But I mean, they have to find out something to keep these movies going. And honestly, it probably will take a bit of buy-in from younger audiences as they're growing up with this new Disney Star Wars era to actually start um, putting more butts in the seats. Moving on, let's see. It says that feature revealed with fanfare in April 2023 at Star Wars Celebration in London is to star Ridley and could have already been in production were it not for some unanticipated headwinds, with writers rotating around more than R2D2's Chrome Dome. Wow. A new writer search is underway, so it's unclear when that one would go. So Ray's individual film, it is pretty interesting that they keep on going through more and more writers. It really makes you wonder if Lucasfilm is just not allowing any sort of creative freedom and they just want what they want. Is that why these writers are leaving so much? I can't imagine that these writers are just awful that they keep bringing in. Something's got to be going on there. Perhaps that is why Lucasfilm was receptive to Kinberg's multi-story pitch, anything to move Rey forward, but it does engender rumors in the Star Wars underground of filmmakers jostling for characters. Ridley, for her part, recently told The Hollywood Reporter, I feel like the new one slash new ones will be so interesting. Time has passed and a lot has changed for me personally, so it'll be interesting to come back to someone who I know so well, but in such a different moment. While insiders dispute the notion that there is a battle for Rey, there definitely is internal deliberation within Lucasfilm as to what do with the heir to Skywalker next. She is the most valuable cinematic asset in some ways, maybe the only one Star Wars has right now. I would disagree. You got Mando is pretty up there too, you know. One source close to the franchise tells THR. Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian and the Yoda-like Grogu are Disney Plus creations and will have their big screen power tested with a feature directed by Jon Favreau releasing in 2026. And hopefully that stays on time. According to sources, Rey is set to play a role in several movies that are being developed, although which ones remain unclear. Star Wars movie development has been under scrutiny for several years, with Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy taking fire for not developing meaningful characters beyond those first created by Lucas prior to the sale to Disney in 2012 for $4 billion. Dollars. Wow, it's been a while. And if the franchise looks forward in its canon timeline, all those beloved characters, Luke, Leia, Vader, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Han, are dead or had their storylines wrapped in prequels or spin-offs. Rey, created in the post-Lucas era, is arguably the only entity with currency on the big screen now. The closet is a little bare, says another source. I would also argue, though, that um, Finn and Poe, I mean, those are all pretty big characters in, well, I mean, Kylo Ren is kind of wrapped up, but there are some pretty significant characters in the sequel trilogy that I think are worth keeping down the road. So I don't really understand why they say this about Rey is the only thing that's gonna help them survive. But what the Kinberg hiring lays bare is that development of movies, the company remains its own unique ecosystem in Hollywood. There are numerous Star Wars movies being developed that overlap characters or timelines. They are not related, but whatever one were to come out first could, in a domino effect, then impact the ones after it. So James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi movie that takes place long before the Skywalkers may be one of the exceptions. Some Lucasfilm directors are aware of what others are working on, while others are not. For instance, Taika Waititi is working on a Star Wars movie. Sean Levy has a feature product in the works, and Donald Glover's Lando idea has moved over development from the TV to the film side of Lucasfilm. A Rogue Squadron project is also still in development as a feature. Oh my goodness, there are so many projects that are circulating around this that it's really, I think it's probably almost a nightmare at this point at Lucasfilm trying to keep all these stories straight, especially if they ever happen to overlap into each other, because then you got to make sure continuity is correct. Right. It's a different way of development, says another insider familiar with the company's way of working. There's so much parallel work going on. It also points to the unique nature of Star Wars. To fans, and in this case, filmmakers and producers, it is not a brand or a franchise, but something akin to a religion. Unlike Marvel or DC with decades of stories propelling them forward, or even Harry Potter with seven fleshed out books, Star Wars at its core has been the original George Lucas movies, and nothing has been codified or been made more canonical in modern times than those three movies. To filmmakers and executives, the first trilogy is the Old Testament. And you're being asked to create the New Testament, adds one source who worked on previous movies, and no one can agree on anything, and there's a lot of second guessing about meanings. Well, yeah, because George knows what Star Wars is. They don't. Another source familiar with the process is more business minded, noting Star Wars is a nostalgia based enterprise and they are running out of ways to create nostalgia. The television side doesn't appear to have these problems, as several insiders note that ARM has a lot more freedom to expand Lucas's universe, which is why there's been a varied slate that runs for better or worse in the eyes of fans. The gamut from Andor season 2 arrives next April to The Acolyte not getting a season 2, as well as a corner for Ahsoka, which is from creator Dave Filoni, the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. Adds an insider, to make standalone movies or continuing the Skywalker saga in any form is a fundamental question the company faces as it tries to move forward. So, what's going on here? Well, they want to, moving forward, have Rey intertwined with these movies, right? That are going to be post Skywalker saga, which is totally fine to me. If she's going to be the centerpiece, kind of like how the Skywalkers were the centerpiece of George's films, totally fine. But make something new and make something relevant. Make something that makes sense and that is cohesive, and that the continuity of the films doesn't get jeopardized by not paying attention to what writers are doing. I think that would be a big, big issue. So, am I excited for more Daisy Ridley? Of course. I love Ray. I love Daisy Ridley. I watch her films all the time when they come out. So I think she's great, and I think she's great for Star Wars. I'm just really hoping that from a writing point of view that everything gets taken care of. So if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drops a like if you like the video, and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on this future that Lucasfilm is laying out for us. Are you positive about it, or are you concerned? And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.